Hello, viewers. This is SP here, and today I'm gonna tell you about some Pokemon ideas I have. Though I'm not planning to sell these ideas to either Nintendo, Game Freak, or Creature with these ideas, especially with what's going on with Pokemon right now. I'm just sharing these ideas because, or no, not sharing, just showing these ideas because it's fun and because this year is Pokemon's 30th anniversary. So I'm just showing these ideas I have for new Pokemon and new regional Pokemon that I have. So here are the new Pokemon I came up with right here. For the first for the first one, I have Pyroraptor, which is a fire rock type. It's one of those fossil type These, well, actually, fossil Pokemon are just Pokemon that are revived from a fossil. So Pyroraptor is a fossil Pokemon that is fire and rock type. And its evolved form here, Pyronicus, is also a fire and rock type Pokemon. And here is Pyroraptor's icy counterpart here, Smilacol, which is named term for Smilodon, which is the saber-toothed cat, and Icicle, which why it's ice and rock type. It's also a fossil Pokemon too. And there is a evolved form, Sabercold. I know the name is a little stupid, but heck, it's also an ice rock type. In fact, usually all the fossil Pokemon I know stayed the same types after evolving. At least certain ones I know of. But anyway. I also have Torch, which is another fossil Pokemon, which is also fire and rock type, and its evolved form, Volcerato. And there's its ice type fossil counterpart, Mamini, which is a name from Mammoth and Mini, which is an ice and rock type, and here is its evolved form, Mamocold. And now here's a starter Pokemon I have in mind, called Pacactus. It's actually based on some walking animal, on some animal that's said to be the ancestor of modern whales. I forget what it's called. Pacacetus, I think that's what its name's. Pacacetus, yeah. It's a grass type starter Pokemon, and its evolved form, Blositas. Blositas is a name for blossom and cetus, like Ambulus cetus. Which I forgot to mean that Pacactus is named from Pacacetus and cactus. So yeah, it's a little bit like a cactus-like Pokemon. And then, oh, I forgot to mention, when it evolves to Blositas, it gains the dragon typing. And I forgot to mention that it's grass type, being a grass type starter Pokemon. Then there it's its second state, Z Zeogrove. Zoogrove. Zuo is the name for Zugalodon, the name that it's the other name of Balosaurus, and it's the preferred name I would choose for this extinct whale because Balosaurus is neither a dinosaur nor reptile, so I would prefer its other name, Zugalodon. It's a grass and dragon type. Now let's see. Oh, here's Prearch. It's the pre-evolved form of Arceus. So it's a legendary Pokemon that has a baby form or a baby form before it evolves. And here's Musor, which is I forgot to mention that Prearch is a normal type. And Musor, it's a dragon fighting type. It's an evolved form of a regional Ma, Machoke, sorry, which I will explain later when I get to the regional Pokemon. And I have an idea for a male Ralts, which would be a psychic and fighting type. And male Ralts have one horn on their heads and have no wispy extension traveling off the back of their feet, though it would help distinct the male Ralts to the female with the female Ralts. And here's its evolved form, Curlio, which is a psychic and fighting type, and the evolved form. Or I just said that, sorry. Forgive my inexperience. And Curlio would be the pre-evolved form of Gallade. It's what male Curlios evolved to, using some kind of stone, but for the second stage of a male Ralts, I would have its evolved form Curlio be the pre-evolved form of Gallade. And here's Kangas Kid. It's a dragon. It's a dragon and ground type. And I was also thinking about fighting and ground type, but I couldn't choose which typing, so I had these choices. It's also the pre-evolved form of Genghis Khan. Though I was thinking about having a male Kangaskhan where it doesn't have a pouch, while female ones have pouches and would have a Genghis kid traveling with them, which is this little tiny baby Kangaskhan on them. Okay, so now for the regional forms. Here's a regional Solgaleo, which I thought of psychic and dark type, which, because suns can create shadows from below when something goes in front of the sun and creates this shadow like dark. I mean, okay, next. Lunala, the regional Lunana, is psychic and fairy because the moon can be bright, shine, light, and so the stars too. So fairy types are usually like light types. Which honestly, I wonder why they didn't call fairy types light types in the first place. I mean, it would make an interesting choice, even going against dark types. And there's Tapu Koko, which is a dark and fairy type. Tapu Lili, a fire and fairy type. Tapu Bulu, a fighting and fairy type. And Tapu Fini, a flying and fairy type. There's Cresselia, which is a fairy type. I forget what Cresselia is, but oh well. Squirtle evolutionary lines. I did came up with different typings for regional Squirtle, a fire and rock type, which gains a new ability called Jet Impulse, which allows the Pokemon to know flying type moves. So yeah, basically, uh, basically a regional Squirtle with fire and rock type, or at least fire typing, would pay homage to Gamera, the kaiju, the turtle-like kaiju. But I also had ideas for like a water and steel type and water and ground type for a regional Squirtle. Here's regional Charmander, which is a fire and rock type and has the ability called Magma Wings, which allows the Pokemon to know flying type moves. And I also thought of a grass and dragon type regional Charmander too. Here's regional Bulbasaur, which would be a water type, and or a grass and dragon type. Here's Trico, which I thought of grass and dragon type, and maybe grass and psychic type for, like Wally, the green hair kid from Gen 3. Here's Torchic, which I had like a fire and ground type, or even fire and psychic type. Here's Mudkip, which the typing I chose would be like water and poison, and water and psychic. The reason why I have psychic typings for the three of them is for, like for the rival Wally, who I would, who I honestly think you should just stick with psychic types. Here's Snivy, which would be a grass and dragon type. Tepig, as I would choose fire and ground, fire and dark, fire and rock, and fire and poison. I don't know why poison, I just thought it'd be an interesting type for a pig-like Pokemon. Oshawott, which would be like a water and normal type, water and steel type, and water and ice type. Here's Reshiram, which would be a fire and dark and a dark and dragon type. Like if they wanted to remake Pokemon Black and White but have regional forms of Reshiram and Zekrom, I would just have Reshiram be all black and dark and fierce looking, and that which would lead to Zekrom, which I had a fairy and electric type and fairy and dragon type. Well, fairies are the opposite of dark types because they are light and stuff. For a regional Zekrom to be fairy type, I would make her more like a graceful type, a more graceful looking, even the way it stands more gracefully and having female like features on the regional Zekrom with fairy typing. Yes, it's gonna be a female, since I forgot to mention that the regional Reshiram with dark typing would have would be a male. So I just think it would be nice for legendary Pokemon to have gender for the heck of it. Here's Hitmonchan with fire and fighting, Hitmonlee with ice and fighting, Skidoo with evolutionary line would be like for a fire and ground type and fire and fire normal typing. It's been a while. I forget what Skiddo is. Well, oh well. Saladin, which is the lizard-like Pokemon, I gave it Dragon and Fire type because Dragon types are reptilian, and since Saladin is a reptilian-like Pokemon, it only makes sense. Druddigon, Druddigon, or Druddigon, I cannot pronounce this name. Druddigon, whatever. For a regional version of Druddigon, I would choose like Fire and Rock, Fire and Dragon. Oh, I put a period instead of a comma right there. My mistake. Here we go. Dragon and Rock, and Dragon and Flying type. Yeah, so it's just those wings on Druddigon, which I know they aren't used for flying, but if there's a regional Druddigon, I would at least give it flying type abilities to make those wings more like used for flying. And for the Bagon evolutionary line, I chose Fire and Dragon, Dragon and Steel, and Dragon and Rock typing for a regional Bagon. Here's Cubone evolution line. I would choose like Rock and Dragon and or Ground and Dragon. So yeah, the rock typing part would be like for a fossil version of Cubone, and it would give it a unique. Well, okay, we just my apologies. I'm still just new at this, so please bear with me. I'm still a little inexperienced with this kind of stuff. Here's a regional rock and roller, which is rock and dragon. Well, let's just say Gigalith looks kind of more like a dinosaur or some reptilian-like design. So I gave rock and roll a little bit more dragon-like features, like dragon feet, and when it evolves to its first stage, forget what it's called, but it would have some also like dragon-like features, which would later evolve to Gigalith, which Gigalith would have a sauropod-like look with the tail and the feet. I mean, Gigalith does look more dinosaur-like, maybe mixed with insect-like, but yeah, it'd be a nice idea to have it a dragon type. Lapras, it would be a rock and water, fire and water, and dragon and water. I always thought the idea of Lapras having its shell be resembling like magma or having a magma-like design on its back. And here's Torkoal, which I have Fire and Rock. I don't know if to have regional Torkoal be a fossil Pokemon, but heck, I just thought it looked like a fitting for to be a Fire and Rock type, and or a Dragon slash Rock type Pokemon, because being a reptile, since dragons are reptilian. Here's Onyx, which would have Rock and Fire and Rock and Dragon type. Larvitar, it's for a regional Larvitar, I would have like either Rock and Fire, Dragon and Rock, and or Ground and Fire. I was gonna think like Fire and Dragon, or actually some other person on the internet came up with a regional Larvitar to be Fire and Dragon, and I don't want to do plagiarize. I don't want to plagiarize someone else's idea like that. So I didn't add this on the list because, like I said, I want to. I don't want to plagiarize anyone else's work. So anyway, regional Aeron, which is a fire and rock, steel dragon, and or fire and ground type. Rhyhorn evolutionary line. A regional Rhyhorn would be, I would choose Ground Fire, Fire and Dragon, Dragon and Fire. Okay, it's just two of the same, but with their typing switched. And Fire and Normal type. I was thinking about having a regional Rhyhorn that would just be smaller, maybe 1/3 the size of a normal Rhyhorn. For, like if anyone would have if Nintendo or the people who made Pokemon would come up with a regional Rhyhorn, just make it smaller. And here's my favorite legendary Pokemon, Groudon, which I gave it a fire and rock typing for a regional Groudon. Regional Groudon would be, more darker red color, which I forget what the name of that darker red would be. So basically about the same color as my VTuber's outfit right here. This dark reddish color. And for a regional Kyogre, I would give it water and ice type. Yeah, you would give it like homage to narwhals with those horns, and they live in the Arctic or near the Arctic sometimes. Here's got regional Gardevoir, which I gave it like either a fire and fairy, rock and fairy, and water and fairy. Rockruff, I gave it like a fire and rock type. Houndour, I gave it a fire and rock because I thought the spike little skulls on its skull-like structures on its body would be like I would give it like a fossil-like look to them. And there's normal and dark, and normal and rock type. Though I think maybe having a fossil Houndour would would also work better with the skeleton-like features on its body. Here's Smeargle. I would pick like a fire type and maybe a fire and normal type. Aerodactyl, I gave it like a fire and flying type, which wouldn't be a fossil Pokemon, just a different kind of Aerodactyl with just a new typing. That would be awesome. Noibat, I would give it fire and flying and dark and flying. Because bats like the dark and they just fly during the dark. And because they're nocturnal animals, which means animals that can see in the dark. Here's Zubat. I give it like ghost and flying, dark flying, and dragon and flying. Well, the reason why I gave it a dragon typing because when I look at the Zubats with their long tails, I think like little flying dragons. And I know that bats aren't reptiles. Swablu's evolved form, Altaria, is a bird-like Pokemon, and it's got the dragon typing. So why not just have Zubat give it a dragon typing? Here's Trapinch. evolutionary line, which would be a bug and dragon type, because obvious reasons. Nidoran, both genders, regional forms of both Nidorans would be poison and dragon and normal, because their evolved forms like okay, Nidorina, Nidoking, and Nidoqueen do have some of the reptilian-like looks to them. So yeah, that's why I came the dragon typing. Scyther, bug and dragon, because Scyther has a more reptilian-like head on it. Lugia, water and dragon. Ho-Ho, fairy, fire slash fairy, and fire and ghost typing. Celebi, which would be a bug and dark type. Chikorita, grass and dark, and grass and dragon. Cyndaquil, fairy and fire and fairy typing, fire and normal, and fire and dark. I don't know why I gave it a fairy typing. It seemed like a good idea at the time. Totodile, which would be a water and dragon type, water and ground type, and a water and dark type. Now the reason why I have these Johto starter Pokemon have the dark typing is because of this character named Silver, the son of Giovanni. I figured he would be looking more like a dark type user, you know. Kangaskhan, which would be a dragon and ground type, and a fighting and ground type. Though maybe it would be nice to have male Kangaskhan, maybe being part fighting. That would be nice. Mareep, which would be a electric normal type, fire and normal type, and a electric and dragon type. I'll let you guess why I chose dragon typing for Mareep. And not because of that mega evolution, but I would let you guess. Vulpix evolution would be like a fire and dark and a fire and ghost typing. Jinx, a ghost and fairy type. Coughing, ghost and dark. Elekid, electric and dark. And or electric and normal typing. Ho-Ho, or Hoot, sorry. It would be a dark and flying type. Ekans, Dark and Poison, Dark and Dragon, and Fire and Dragon. The Fire Dragon is for like we could have a regional Ekans as a starter type Pokemon. Because usually the starter fire type Pokemon are based on the Chinese zodiac. Which honestly, why did Nintendo or Game Freak ever thought of having a regional Ekans be a fire starter type? I mean, that could work and fit with that whole Chinese zodiac thing. Silicobra, which yeah, fire and dragon. Yeah, okay, Silicobra would also make a good snake-like starter Pokemon for the fire typing because of the Chinese zodiac that I mentioned. Machop and Machoke, which would be dragon and fighting, which would lead to this original idea for a new Pokemon called Mussaur. It would be the evolved form of Machoke. Because Machop and Machoke do have reptilian-like heads, except for Machamp, which looks like this freakishly humanoid thing with a weird mouth. No offense to those who say Machamp is is his or her favorite Pokemon. No offense. Okay. Sandaya, which would be a dragon and water typing. Dynamo, dragon and water. Drippy, which would be a dragon and water type. Scarelp, which would be a dragon and water, and a water and grass type. Axew, dragon and steel, dragon and rock, and dragon and fire. Maybe a fossil Axew would would be cool. Frigibox, a Dragon and Fire, Dragon and Steel, and Fire and Steel type. Chimchar, which would be a Fire and Steel or a Fire and Normal type. Piplup, a Water and Ice type. Turtwig, a Grass and Dragon type. Cranidos would be a Rock and Dragon and a Rock or a Rock and Fire type. Shieldon, which would be a Rock and Normal type and or a Rock and Ground type. Shinx, a Normal and Electric type. Meowth, a Ground type. Because, like with the Egyptians and with the Sphinx and all that. Phanpy, Steel and Ground type, or a fire type. Cubchoo, a normal and fighting type. Chingling, a fairy type. Mischievous, a fairy and ghost type. Cherubi, a fairy and plant type. Drifloon, fairy and flying. Oddish, grass and ghost. Venonat, bug and ghost. Apon, fighting type. Geodude, rock and fighting. Growlithe, normal and fighting, and just plainly and or just normal. Mankey, normal and electric. Hitmontop, steel and fighting type. Hippopotas, normal and dragon. I just thought giving it like a dragon-like or reptilian-like tail on them. Tratini, fire and dragon. Riolu, normal and fighting, because, Riolu looks like a fox, and a fire and fighting type, which would sound cool. Zoroa, normal and fighting, because it's a fox, and foxes are usually associated with fire. Lickitung, normal and dragon, or probably just plainly dragon. Swablu, flying and fairy. Natu, dark and flying. Groki, grass and rock. Scorbunny. Oh, I forgot to mention the reason why I have Groki be a rock type, because I would have it based like a Gigantopithecus, which is a prehistoric animal. And usually a lot of the rock type Pokemon are based on prehistoric creatures, especially the fossil Pokemon. Though it would be nice to have a Groki fossil Pokemon. For a regional Groki, sorry. Scorbunny, which is a fire and normal, fire and steel, and or a fire and fairy type. Swablu, Swab, Swablu, can't pronounce it. A regional form of Swablu would be like either a water and steel, water and dark, water and flying, or even a water and dragon type. Sprogatito, grass and rock, because you know how grass types are usually based on prehistoric Pokemon, prehistoric animals, grass and normal, and grass and steel. Frucoco. Now this one I thought of an idea if it gained more like a snake-like feature. So I gave it fire and dragon and or fire and ground. So for Faraco, the regional Faraco would have no limbs and it would be like a worm, which is a legless dragon. But it would later evolve into Crocalor, which would gain its front limbs, resembling a lindworm. A lindworm is a kind of a dragon, kind of like a worm, but would have front limbs. And lastly, it would evolve into Skeledridge, which would gain back legs and resemble like an Asian dragon. I mean, yeah, it would also lead up to the dragon for the Chinese zodiac. Thinking about it, Is for Coco maybe more based on the dragon for for the Chinese zodiac? I didn't think about that well before I'm making this video, but who knows? Here's Quaxley, which would be a water and flying type, water and psychic type, and or water and steel type. Well, for the water and steel type, it would gain like a weapon, like daggers or something, kind of fitting the trend of water type starter Pokemon having their second stages be based on weapons of sorts. And now for Koraidon, which would be a normal and dragon type, or even a flying and dragon type. Although maybe I could have Koraidon be rock type, be part rock type because it's an ancient Pokemon, or a Pokemon ancient basing on prehistoric times. I should have thought of that too. Oh well. Miraidon, obviously steel and dragon type because you know. Cyclizar, which is just purely dragon type. Well, I wonder if I would make the main character starter Pokemon be a Cyclizer, which would later evolve to either a Koraidon or Miraidon. Oh well. Char, Cadet, Fire and Flying. Talo, Fire and Flying. Dialga, Dragon and Ice. Palkia, Dragon and Fire, for obvious reasons. Giratina, Dragon and Dark. Gibble, Gibble Evolution Line. Dragon and Water. Milotic, Water and Dragon. Gyarados, Water and Dragon. And lastly, Beldum, just Rock type, for obvious reasons. So that's all the regional Pokemon ideas that I have. I forgot to mention that they would have evolutionary lines for some of these that you could probably read what I have up here, so you probably know. This is like I said, I'm not just planning I mean, I'm not planning to sell these ideas to Nintendo or Game Freak or the Pokemon Company. This is just for fun. I just figured I'd just be nice to show these ideas to people just for the fun of it, and not for money or anything. Which which it may be nice to sell your ideas to companies for the sake of money and for doing what you love. But I would know better than to foolishly sell my ideas like that. I would be careful to if I want to do that, but I'm just not willing to sell any of my ideas to anybody because, oh, well, it's just like I said. So, what do you guys think about these Pokemon ideas for like the new Pokemon and the regional Pokemon? I really hope that I'm not plagiarizing someone else's work or anything like that because, like I told you about that fire and dragon typing thing for Tyranitar because someone else already came up with that idea and I don't want to plagiarize anyone else's work. So, okay. Leave a comment down below and goodbye.